representatives from the offices of Congressman Dan Goldman, State Senator Ryan Kavanaugh, Assemblymember Grace Lee, and Councilmember Christopher Marte here with us tonight. On behalf of the Borough-Based Jails team, I'd like to welcome you all to our Community Design Input Workshop for the Manhattan facility. As you can all tell, the lovely space that we're in tonight is a little bit echoey. So if you don't mind, try to keep your conversations or side comments to a minimum while we're presenting so that everyone here has an opportunity to hear the presentation. So thank you all for coming out tonight. Your participation and your input is a really important part of our design process. We also thank you all for accommodating the change in our rescheduled dates. I hope everyone stayed safe and dry last week. A few notes before we get started. We are recording tonight's presentation. We're also recording the Q&A session. For anyone who might not be comfortable standing up and asking a question in front of the crowd or on the camera, you can write your questions down on the note cards that will be handed out. We'll have folks collecting them from the audience. We'll do our best to get to all of your questions if we can, and those that we can will respond in writing after the meeting. For anyone who's unable to attend tonight, if you have friends or family members who wanted to be here but couldn't, we're going to post the recording of the presentation as well as all of the design materials that you'll see. They're all going to be posted on an online interactive website starting tomorrow. So anyone who wants to participate and provide their feedback will have an opportunity to do so. Finally, tonight's presentation is focused on the design of the Manhattan Borough-Based Jail facility. I know a lot of folks have questions about construction, costs, things like soil conditions, dewatering. Those are all great questions. There's going to be a lot of opportunities in the future to ask those questions. We will hold a designated meeting specifically focused on the construction process later towards the end of this year. But tonight's meeting, we're going to focus on the design. We're going to focus our Q&A session on the design. I think that's all I have for introductory remarks. One last thing. Those of you who are standing at the moment, thank you all. We're going to go through the presentation, and then during the Q&A, there's going to be additional space upstairs for those who would prefer to do the Q&A in Chinese. And so some of the seats might free up then. So thank you all for your patience. All right, I'm now going to hand it over to Ken Drucker from HOK. And why don't you tell us a little bit about where you and the team are at with the design.
Thank you all for inviting us to the first of many community design workshops where we're actively looking for your participation. My name is Ken Drucker, and I'm the design lead and senior principal for HOK's New York studio and firm-wide design board chair. On behalf of Tudu Perini and ONG, the contractors and the entire design team, we thank you for coming. It's important for you to realize that the design that was presented as part of the selection process, the RFP process, was conceptual. It was a test fit of the program and making sure that it fit onto the site and for budgeting purposes. But now we're really starting the design process in earnest, and we encourage your involvement and participation as we go through multiple opportunities for you to see and influence the progress of the design. I want to introduce Ami Krishan, the design lead who's working closely with all of us on the design effort. She's a design principal, my partner at HOK, and has many years of experience working on civic projects. Today, we're going to basically discuss the team. We have about a 30-minute presentation, and then we're going to allow people to go upstairs for 5 minutes, and then we're going to open everything up for questions and answers. We're going to basically discuss the team, the community engagement process, some of the design progress since we've been awarded the project, and then we're going to open it up for questions and answers. We're going to provide simultaneous translation during the course of this presentation to Mandarin and Cantonese. So as Lauren said, if you don't have a headset, please pick one up, and the question and answer session will be entirely in Chinese upstairs. We'll have people to guide you to the room upstairs for the question and answer session of this presentation.
Good evening. I'm Aman Krishnan from HOK Architects. Hopefully that works a little bit better. I would like to describe our community and design engagement process that we'll be undertaking over the next 2 years. In June, we met with the elected officials and some members of the Neighborhood Working Committee and walked them through our process and what we were proposing. Our partners, TBC and ONG, will be hosting in August a minority and women-owned business information session that will inform you on how you may participate in the project, both on the construction side and the design side. So we're here today with one of our first community workshops. We'll come back to you similarly in September. And then we're going to come back to you, to the community board, of course, which is open to the public, so you're all welcome to join in November. And these 3 events will inform our submission to the Public Design Commission. That's our first submission, a conceptual submission. Post that, we will come back to you in spring 2026 and come back to, again, the community board in spring 26 to inform our preliminary design submission to the public, to the PDC. And then again, we'll come back for a community workshop and a community board engagement in winter of 26-27 before we submit for the final PDC review. The most important part, of course, about this entire process is that we're really looking forward to your feedback, to incorporate and have your feedback positively shape the design and the development of it. This is essentially a graphic of the process that I just described. We were selected as the design builder and architect for this process. During the selection process, we prepared a design that was to scope and test fit the process, really, right? Upon our selection now is when the true design work really begins. Therefore, you have the opportunity in the 4 community workshops, the 3 community board engagement processes to really provide your input, and we'll be bringing the design to you in various stages of development for that process to be undertaken. And all of that happens in the design phase, out of which we then start the construction phase. Again, our partners, TBC and ONG, are going to come to you with a plan for the construction engagement. So similar to the design, we'll also have a construction engagement process where you'll be able to provide community feedback. But today is really about talking to you about the design, where we are in its progress, and how you might provide input there. There are 4 areas that the community can truly impact and provide their feedback. That is the public realm. It includes the streets surrounding the site, including the wide street pedestrian arcade. The architecture, which is the building materials, the street level experience, the interior public spaces of the public lobby and visiting spaces, and also the interior secure spaces for people in custody. We understand, we're intimately familiar with the fact that you've had prior engagement with the team, with the city team, before our selection. We had all of the material that was made available to us during the selection process, so we read through it, made ourselves intimately familiar. We continue to incorporate that into our design, so all of the time and effort you've spent, it does inform how we develop the design. We understand there are concerns about the contextual relationship of the project to its neighborhood, the materiality, use of natural materials, the durability of those materials, providing a safe and secure street experience that integrates lighting, that integrates landscape, provides space for art, for families, and also equally important, the fact that all of this engagement is held equitably both in English and Chinese, and therefore we're providing translations today, and there is the conference room upstairs for dedicated Q&A. We're here today to share with you our design progress. We have incorporated some of the material that we prepared from our proposal phase to get your feedback, to identify issues, and have a meaningful dialogue with you. but we've also brought to you our early stage design progress to inform the massing and blocking and the development of the design since we've been selected.
So it's important to understand the program that's contained within the building. We have 1,040 beds, single cells, for men in this facility. We have 125 accessory parking spaces below grade for city employees and people who are working in the building. And that's accessed off of Center Street per the letter of agreement with the mayor's office, post-Euler. And we've got 20,000 square feet of community space at the ground floor that includes 5,960 square feet of retail space specifically as part of that 20,000 square feet. As a reminder, there are many different elements that go into a facility like this that are important to the agencies running the facility and also to the community. Those things include programs for persons in custody, elements for staff well-being, and also access to the community, including visiting and other elements. It's all about normalizing the experience of going to a New York City jail. All of those are going to be incorporated into this project. And some of the guiding principles that we're following are very important to the ethos of this project. We're looking for opportunities to provide natural light deep within the floor plates. This is a healing opportunity to feel access to light and views. We want to give the persons in custody a sense of autonomy, a sense of individual freedom within the context that they're in the indoor spaces. It's also important that for every day room, we're providing access to the outdoors. Naturally ventilated, filled with daylight, and opportunities to see the sky and views of the city. We want to normalize the space. We've studied behavioral spaces all over the world, and it's very important to us to create a space that helps the occupants feel like normal people. We hope to use a variety of materials, natural materials, colors, soothing colors and textures to promote a sense of warmth and even looking for opportunities for biomimicry so that there's connections to nature. And we're providing an increased access to medical and mental health care. There are floors dedicated for therapeutic individuals, and that's integrated into this facility. There are also programs for education. There's teaching spaces, there's a chapel, there's horticulture, there's classrooms, there's culinary, lots of opportunities to take additional courses. The whole idea is to normalize the space. So when we design any project, it's important to us to integrate our thinking of this new building into the neighborhood. It's important to understand the public realm and the context. We understand that the White Street pedestrian arcade is a major connection between Chinatown and the Civic Center in Tribeca to the west. This building is replacing an existing facility where White Street was open to the sky. So it's very important for us to look for opportunities to bring daylight deep within the White Street pedestrian arcade. In fact, we've widened the arcade from the 35 feet that was part of the Euler requirement to 50 feet, almost the full 60 feet of the New York City street. Zooming in on the site itself, what's important to understand is that the grain of the Chinatown community is very different than the grain and scale of the civic community to the west. We are aware of the transportation issues, the subway tunnel, access points. We want to be able to connect Columbus Park through the White Street pedestrian arcade to Collect Pond Park. It's important to note that the Euler process, as I said, the arcade was 35 feet wide. We think the 50-foot width will provide for ample opportunity for this group to help program that space. You can see the black arrows in this diagram represent the entry points. The black area on the upper left is where the community center will be accessed. There's access to retail. The black triangle you see in the arcade is access to almost 6,000 square feet of retail space, which will activate the pedestrian arcade. The two large areas that you see on the bottom, the large arrow, the red one on the right, is where the main lobby will be for the facility itself, and the other arrow, the one on the left, is where the entrance to the staff will be. The smaller in and out areas you see on the left-hand side, closer to Walker Street, is where access is for accessory parking. And then there's a through-block one-way connection for Sally Court Driveway, which is basically a secure driveway open to the sky for basically loading and servicing the facility. And Sally Court is where persons or custodies are brought into the space, into the building. There are doors at both ends that you won't be able to see into the Sally Court, and it's a secure setting. It's important to note that all these access points were defined in the letters of agreement and Mueller package, so we're abiding by those agreements. It's important to note that we're adhering to the requirement for the 20,000 square feet of community space. That space we're treating as a white box space. It will be programmed by you during later sessions, not during these first 4 community meetings that we discussed, but these will be scheduled by the DDC at a later date to basically lay out the yellow spaces that you see. The community and retail space lines the passage, and the main entrance is on Baxter Street along the facade that you see in yellow. The cape represents the public lobby. The public lobby is where all visitors are entering the building and be processed to move up to visitors on the upper floor. And when PICs are released, they'll exit through the same lobby and a separate entrance out, and that's where all the social services will be for people who are released. The staff lobby is a multi-story lobby that goes both below ground and above grade. And then I already mentioned the Sally Court and the loading dock to the right. This shows sort of the connection that's really important to us. It's very important for us to have the connection, the White Street Passage, as a pedestrian arcade is really important to connect Chinatown to Tribeca to the Civil District, but more importantly, to connect the green spaces that are so vital to Chinatown. Here you can see the scale of the streets as we develop our solutions for the facades. And once again, the facades that were in the concept design that you saw last year were placeholders. We've already moved past that. We've already begun to re-explore the materiality of the building, and so to do that, we have to understand the scale of the buildings on Center Street are very different than the scale of the buildings on Baxter Street. The buildings on Center Street are made of limestone. The modularity of the buildings are larger. It's retail. You can see the view down Walker Street. It's a very tight street wall, but the scale of the openings are larger on the civic side of the building. From a landscape perspective, we see an opportunity to integrate seating. We have a secure environment. We do have a requirement to provide security around the perimeter of the site. So we're integrating landscaping, bioswales, which are basically planters that take some of the storm runoff, like we had last Thursday night, and absorb that storm runoff before it goes into the storm sewers. But we're looking at a more rigid geometry along Center Street that's more civic in scale. You can see the image of Rockefeller Center on the left. And this is a rendering of our previous design, but it shows our desire to look for an opportunity to make sure that there are street trees along Center Street and Baxter, integrated with the security and the landscaping and seating, so we don't surround the entire site with bollards. The scale of Baxter Street is entirely different. The materials are entirely different. You have brick, you've got awnings. Aman's going to go through our analysis of some of that, but the point is that we understand as a responsible building, we need to deal with the scale, the texture, the grain of Chinatown, which is very different than the scale and texture of the civic side on the opposite side. And once again, what's great about Columbus Park is that there's a lot of different uses, it's more natural, it's got boulders. And so here we're looking at opportunities along Baxter Street to actually expand the sidewalk in front of the community center. You will see security bollards, but we want to integrate seating, and we want to take the concept of the softness of the boulders, which people also use as seating, for opportunities for people to congregate and meet and chat. We are planning on integrating our design of the landscape and the public realm with the architecture. These are the old facades. We'll be showing you new facades during the course of the next 3 meetings. But once again, the point here is there will be bike storage, bike racks, seating, opportunities for smaller groups of people to congregate and niches within the seating areas around the perimeter. And our plan is to actually plant street trees along the frontage of both Baxter and Center Street. So it's important for us to sort of take the living room of Chinatown, which is Columbus Park, and look for opportunities to include color, variation, opportunities for small-scale groups, large-scale groups, and create a nice, welcoming experience. We want to work with you in programming the White Street Pedestrian Arcade. We want to work with you in developing that. We've got retail along that frontage. The goal is to take food and beverage seating and have it flow out into the pedestrian arcade. We want a clear passage from east to west. This site is sloped. It's tall, higher on Baxter Street. It slopes down to 7th Street. So the White Street Pedestrian Arcade is actually a gentle slope that goes from the high point on the top of the slide to the low point. And you can basically see the idea is to integrate as much landscape into the site as possible. This is a view of the previous design of the White Street Arcade, but it's important to note there's a modularity to this. We want to express each of the retail storefronts. In this scheme, we use bay windows. We're currently exploring other approaches to how we represent that retail in that facade. Moving into the building, it's really important for us to capture daylight off of Center Street. We would like to bring daylight from Center Street deep into the lobby. We want the design of the lobby to reduce the stress of visiting for families and visitors, and to actually have social services and allow for people to de-stress as they're being released and return to the street. Our design integrates natural materials, principles of biophilic design, which is bringing nature into the lobby, provide for planting, warm colors, terrazzo for ease of maintenance, and bringing daylight deep all the way towards the visitors. So in the lobby itself, we plan on integrating public art. There's cashiers, there's information. Visitors will be directed to the rear of the lobby, and then we'll take an elevator up to the upper floor. We also have a children's play area. There'll be vending machines. The idea is to create a warm, inviting, and welcoming space. Moving up to the visitation area, there are different types of visitation. There's contact visitation, which you see here. There's non-contact visitation. There's visitation between attorneys and people in custody. The idea is to create light-filled spaces, warm materials, and an opportunity for natural wood in some of the seating areas as well. This approach uses the space in terms of making sure that there is ample opportunities for visitors to get together. This is a view of a typical day room where the people in custody in each of their living units will be congregating throughout the day. You can see on the left-hand side under the stairs access to one of the recreation areas. Every day room, either single tier or double tier, has direct access to the outside. This provided outdoor space, usually has basketball and other equipment within it, and the day room provides access to program spaces, multi-purpose rooms that surround the perimeter of the space. Every person that's in custody in this building will have access to this living space or a space like it. This is a view of a therapeutic floor where there's more intensive access to therapeutic care or mental health care or people in custody that have been designated to need additional attention. There are also facilities or medical facilities throughout the project. This space also has access to daylight with access to programmed areas and access to outdoor space. The cell itself conforms to all the standards. There's one person in each cell. The idea is to use natural materials again for the bed and for this desk. Access to daylight is about 12 feet of glass, and essentially the bottom 6 feet has a translucent material on it. We call it ceramic frit. So people from outside can't see people inside, and vice versa from basically their head height down.
Transitioning to the exterior of the building, we start with the location of the site, which is on the northern end of the Civic District. It is surrounded to the east and the north by Chinatown and Little Italy, and to the west by Tribeca. We are studying the context of the site very carefully. It includes both the civic buildings that surround the Foley Square, such as City Hall and the Atchison Criminal Courthouse, but also the neighborhood buildings. We are studying them for materiality, we're studying them for texture, for their scale, and how they might apply to different parts of the building and how we might learn from that. In the proposal stage, for example, we had looked at the language of the civic buildings, the vertical texture, and the scale of these buildings, and translated that through a modern interpretation into framed modules for the facade that provided solar shading for the users, but also the surrounding community, but they also at the same time optimize daylight. Again, we're also looking at these buildings for their color and materiality. So the outer wings of the building were thought of as a lighter color that mimics the granite or the limestone of the civic buildings. And then the central part was representing the copper patina that is often found in the civic context itself. We will continue to do these studies and weave them into the neighborhood character. Here we're looking at a close-up view along Center Street that looks northwards. And to the left of the page, you're seeing the main entrance of the facility that carries the entrance, the rhythm of entrances along other civic buildings on Center Street, such as the Criminal Courthouse and also the Superior Court. As we turn around the main entrance on the right-hand side of the image, you're looking at the White Street Arcade towards Baxter Street, which incorporates retail and landscaping. And also incorporates lighting at the soffit level and the pedestrian level to provide a safe environment that is appropriately lit. Now coming down to the White Street Arcade itself, you're looking at an elevational view, so cut through the building. We're looking northward here. Based on the comments that we've heard to date, we will be incorporating more natural materials in the design as we develop it moving forward. The previous design incorporated glazing that was meant to represent transparency, made the street vibrant with the activity of the retail that is behind the glazed facade. But we're going to bring the updates to the design that includes more natural material to the next upcoming meetings with you. Coming out of White Street Passage onto Baxter Street, again looking northwards, we are, you see the White Street Arcade wrap around. Community and retail spaces are located all along Baxter Street, creating vibrant activity and active street frontages along the Baxter Street to provide a continuation of experience. Above these community and retail spaces are building support functions, and then above that is where the housing units are located. Now the renderings you've seen so far were the images that we had developed during our proposal stage. So again, as I said, that was a part of the scoping exercise, and said that was placeholder. What we're bringing to you now, starting from this slide onwards, is where we are with the design since we've been selected as the design builder. So we're really sort of starting at the beginning, looking at the blocking and stacking of the project itself. We started with the Europe envelope, which is the permitted envelope of building mass that you can see depicted here. Our first strategy is to register the White Street Passage vertically up through the building. And as we've described previously, our minimum requirement for the White Street Passage is 35 feet. We've increased that to 50 feet, so the experience at White Street really feels like a typical New York City street, which tends to be 60 feet, so we're very close to that. And it's a continued experience of White Street that is west of the site. Now this strategy also helps us break the massing of the building down. Using the same logic, we also slice the building in the north-south direction, breaking it down into 4 wings of building that is 4 smaller components that come together in one large mass. Once we separate these out into wings, we're able to lower the heights of these individual wings. The highest part is to the south, that is close to the criminal courthouse. And as we go to the north, which is the lower context of the neighborhood, the building steps down. And then also from the west to the east, again, the west we have taller buildings, larger scale buildings. On the east we have a finer grade Chinatown buildings. The building steps down towards the east as well. And the building mass above White Street Arcade is stepped down the most, so it separates out the south wing of the building and the north wing of the building, really creating that sense of scale and separation. In terms of how we apply materiality and how we're thinking about materiality, in here, the White Street Arcade and the building mass that adjacently is around the White Street is going to be described in a warm material that we'll again come back to in the fall. And that makes the White Street feel like it is wider and more integrated with the environment. Additionally, in stepping the height down, in stepping the building mass in on the White Street Arcade, we're able to bring down more daylight down into White Street. The building mass that we're seeing in the light white color surrounding the White Street Arcade also appears as similar volumes. Those volumes are meant to mimic the vertical volumes of the criminal courthouse, and the rhythm of that vertical continues and connects down to the civic scale. At the podium, which is the lower floors of the building, we are also relating to the context. On the south of White Street, next to the criminal courthouse, the height of that podium building matches the podium of the courthouse. To the north of White Street, the height of the podium matches the height of the buildings across from Baxter Street. At the ground floor itself, the building is stepped back to create a wider sidewalk that creates an enhanced pedestrian experience. It also, at the intersection of White Street with both Baxter and on Center Street side, the building mass is pulled back to create a public space, a public plaza. So that helps connect to both Collect Pond and Columbus Park and provide visual and seamless physical transition between those spaces. This is a section going through the White Street Arcade. On the left-hand side, you see a plan. So as White Street is shown as the white portion that goes through the building. What is shown in light gray between the two dark massing is the mass overhead on the White Street. So you'll see a lot of White Street is actually open to the sky itself. And you're seeing then the image on the center, which is the section. You can see the amount of White Street that is open to the sky. It brings daylight, therefore, deep into the street. It has a street experience. And the more daylight we can bring in, the more planting and more trees we can incorporate in the White Street. So that is an important aspect of how we're developing the project. So we take that just blocking and massing, that's where we are at in our development at this point. And placing that in the context, you see what we're trying to do is in expressing the White Street, we break the project down into slimmer volumes. Similarly, the view from Columbus Park does the same thing, and you also see the north-south cutout that breaks the southern facade, the facade that is facing the criminal courthouse itself. So we thank you for coming today. We are committed to design excellence on this project. We understand, we believe this is a civic asset that needs to be responsible both in economic relationship to its city, its relationship to resources, optimizes performance, embraces sustainability, but also strives towards design excellence. So that concludes our presentation portion. We will allow a few minutes for people to congregate before we start a Q&A.
Thank you, Ken and Armand. That was a great presentation. All right, so a note on the Q&A portion. I know everyone's eager to ask a lot of questions. If you stay here on this level, we're going to continue to do the Q&A like we've done the presentation, which is the presenters and the people answering questions will do so in English. And for anyone who wants interpretation, our interpreters will continue to provide interpretation in Mandarin or Cantonese through the headsets. However, if you speak Chinese, whether it's Mandarin or Cantonese, and you would prefer to do Q&A in Chinese directly, so you're going to ask your questions in Mandarin or Cantonese, and you'll get responses in Mandarin or Cantonese, we have a room upstairs that will be facilitated by Chinese-speaking individuals. So if you want, you can, it's totally optional, but you can go upstairs to the left for the Chinese language breakout session.
Lauren, before you do the breakouts, could you provide more detailed information in terms of, as related to, you talked about heights and massing, there are points of agreement with the community, right? That we don't, how do I know that that's in alignment? So we really want to understand for heights and massing is exactly how tall. What is the massing?
The building is within the ULUR envelope, which is a maximum height of 295 feet with a 40-foot allowance for mechanical.
And the massing?
The massing is also within the ULUR envelope. That's
Which FAR?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but you can look it up.
The architect should have that.
Okay, Tammy, can you just give people a chance to go upstairs if they want? We'll start the Q&A moment. Just give us a couple minutes.
How many stories is this thing? They don't even say how many stories. 295 feet.
楼上有讲国语和广东话的